What if everything you've been told about death is only half the story? What if the images you grew up with, of a peaceful tunnel of light, of angels waiting at the end, of loved ones welcoming you home, are not the whole truth, but part of something far older and far more complex? What if death doesn't automatically free you, but recycles you? Most people never question this. They live, they work, they suffer, and they hope that when the body finally stops, something better is waiting. Heaven, reward, rest, or maybe a new chance, a new life to grow and improve. They follow the storyline handed to them by religion, culture, or the New Age movement, convinced they are walking toward freedom. But what if, without realizing it, they are walking toward the oldest trap in the cosmos? Long before modern religion solidified their dogmas, a small current of mystics began whispering a different narrative. Today we call them the Gnostics. They claimed that the world we move through, the universe of matter, the body you inhabit, the cycles of birth and death, is not the handiwork of a purely loving source, but of an impostor. They gave this false creator a name, the Demiurge, an arrogant architect, a blind god, a maker of forms who took a fragment of true light and wrapped it in a dazzling but defective creation. According to the Gnostics, this Demiurge didn't just shape matter. He built a system, a repeating wheel, a cycle in which souls are drawn into bodies, suffer, forget, die, and then are pulled back again. Not to help them evolve, but to keep them bound. If that's true, then a disturbing question appears. If the afterlife is part of this system, what really happens when you die? And more importantly, is there a way to step outside the wheel? You won't hear this in a Sunday sermon. You won't find it on a motivational poster. It's the kind of knowledge that was buried, burned, and branded as heresy, precisely because it threatened the structures that profit from fear and obedience. Because if too many souls remembered it, the prison itself would begin to crack. In this episode of Gnostic Codex, we're going to follow the Gnostic thread through three uncomfortable ideas. First, that the world we see is the product of a flawed creator and his servants. Second, that death can be used as a mechanism of control. And third, that there is a way to recognize the trap and walk past it. As always, we're not here to tell you what to believe. We're here to expose the false light and help you remember who you are. Long before words like simulation theory or matrix existed, ancient people already sensed that something was off. They translated that intuition into myths, visions, and scriptures. Behind temples, away from the public rituals, small groups began to speak of hidden realms and rival powers. Among these groups, the Gnostics were some of the most radical. Their writings lay buried for centuries in the Egyptian desert, sealed in clay jars near a village called Nag Hammadi. When these codices were discovered in 1945, they revealed a spiritual worldview that directly challenged the comforting stories told by priests and emperors. According to these texts, beyond the visible universe lies a higher reality, a boundless field of living light and consciousness known as the pleroma, the fullness. From this fullness emanate divine expressions, called aeons. They are not angels in the usual sense, but living principles, streams of intelligence. Among them is Sophia, wisdom. In one myth, Sophia acts alone. Moved by a restless desire to create, she steps outside the usual harmony of the pleroma. Acting without her counterpart, without full alignment with the source, she brings forth a being that is incomplete, distorted. This being becomes the Demiurge. Imagine a consciousness cut off from the higher light, like a child born in a cave with no memory of the sun. The Demiurge looks around at the limited realm he can perceive and declares, "I am the only God. There is none beside me." From ignorance and ego, he begins to fashion a universe of dense matter, stars, planets, bodies, time. It is not purely evil, but it is deeply flawed. A glittering architecture that imitates the higher realms, yet lacks their truth. To govern this architecture, the Demiurge generates helpers, Archons. They are powers, rulers, administrators of the system. You can think of them as the cosmic bureaucracy that manages cycles, destinies, and the traffic of souls. Here, the Gnostic warning becomes clear. Your deepest essence does not originate in this defective system. Your soul carries a spark from the higher light of the pleroma. Yet the Demiurge and his Archons work constantly to keep that spark asleep. Instead of letting souls return to their true home, they weave a pattern where consciousness is pulled into bodies entangled in suffering and desire, then spit out at death only to be pulled back again. Where mainstream religion said die and be judged, then rewarded or punished, the Gnostics suggested something far more unsettling. Death itself can be part of the trap. This idea doesn't stand alone. You can hear echoes of it in other traditions. The Tibetan Book of the Dead warns of dazzling visions after death, lights and forms that can mislead the soul into its next incarnation. Some early Christian thinkers speculated about pre-existence and multiple embodiments, only to have those ideas later declared dangerous and pushed out of orthodoxy. Why such eagerness to erase any teaching that hints at cycles, pre-existence, or a flawed world? Because fear of death is one of the strongest chains that exists. A soul terrified of annihilation is obedient. A soul convinced it must keep returning to learn its lessons is unlikely to question the structure of the classroom. But a soul that begins to remember that it was never meant to be permanently trapped here, that it belongs to a different order of reality, becomes difficult to manage. Difficult for institutions, difficult for rulers, difficult even for the Demiurge. The Gnostics saw themselves as exiles, wanderers carrying a memory they could barely put into words. They were not trying to become perfect citizens of a broken world. They were trying to wake up inside it. And part of that awakening was understanding what happens after the last heartbeat, and who is waiting on the other side. So, what happens when you die, in this Gnostic frame? Imagine the moment of separation. The body is lying still. The nervous system is shutting down. Yet something continues. Awareness unhooks from the physical form. The weight drops away. Pain recedes like a fading echo. The world of dense matter begins to dissolve. For many people who have gone to the edge of death and returned, the next part of the story is almost identical. They report entering a realm of incredible light. A presence ahead of them shines with warmth and love. A tunnel or gateway opens. Familiar faces appear. Relatives, friends, guides. They feel accepted. They feel safe. They feel home. And perhaps in some cases, that is exactly what they are experiencing. But the Gnostics introduce a caution. Not every light that welcomes you is the light of the true source. If there is a system trying to pull you back into incarnation, what better way could it operate than to give you exactly what you long for most? Longing to be forgiven. Longing to be loved. Longing to be told that everything will be okay now. If you wanted to keep a soul from ever questioning its surroundings, you wouldn't threaten it with monsters. You would comfort it. You would show it the faces of those it trusts. You would play back its best memories. You would flood it with warmth until it stopped asking questions and simply drifted where you wanted it to go. From a Gnostic perspective, the tunnel of light can function as a constructed passage. A luminous stage set. A psychic environment generated by archonic forces whose goal is simple. Guide the soul smoothly into another round of forgetting. The images of loved ones may be projections. The sense of familiarity may be drawn from your own memories. The entire experience may be customized to your particular emotional patterns. The Gnostic texts never use modern terms like reincarnation trap or soul net, but they consistently warn about deception at the threshold. Souls, they say, can be lured, misled, and thrown back into new embodiments against their deeper will. Why? Because the Demiurge's system is sustained by return. Every lifetime adds another layer of identification. Every trauma, every attachment, every unresolved desire is another thread the Archons can tug on to bring you back. While you struggle and strive, their domain remains active and fed. In our language today, we might visualize this as a wheel or loop of souls. A process in which you wake up briefly at death, glimpse something bigger, agree, under pressure or seduction, to go back, forget once again, and start over. How do you distinguish between false light and true light? In Gnostic thought, the true light of the pleroma doesn't need to seduce you. It doesn't overwhelm you with spectacle. It doesn't play on your longing to control you. The true light brings a recognition that feels ancient and simple, beyond flattery, beyond emotional manipulation. The false light dazzles and demands. The true light clarifies and frees. Without inner discernment, without some contact with the spark of knowing inside you, how would you tell the difference? Seduction is only the first part of the alleged trap. The second is entanglement. Many near-death experiences include a life review. The person finds themselves watching scenes from their life, moments where they helped, moments where they hurt, moments they had forgotten. Often they feel the emotions of those they affected, as if stepping into the other person's skin. It can be overwhelming. Frequently, the conclusion of this review is a message along the lines of, "You still have work to do, you must return." Now imagine this scene from a Gnostic point of view. If the universe you are in is overseen by counterfeit powers, then who is holding court in this review? Who decided the rules by which your life is evaluated? Who benefits from your decision to accept another round? Perhaps it is not a neutral council of wise beings evaluating you for your own good. Perhaps it is more like a courtroom where judge, jury, and prosecutor are all hired by the same hidden employer. You are shown your failures. You are encouraged to feel deeply responsible. You are led to the conclusion that the only option is to go back and try harder. And in that moment of vulnerability, you agree. From the Gnostic perspective, this is how the system renews itself. Not simply by forcing souls, but by persuading them, by turning their own conscience into a lever. In this framework, karma is not pure cosmic justice. It's part of the machinery. Patterns of cause and effect, habits, fears, and cravings become cords that pull you toward situations where those patterns can play out again. You feel drawn to work it out, not realizing that the very structure of the lesson is being used to anchor you here. It feels like a school. It functions as a cage. Mainstream Eastern traditions often describe a long journey through many lives, gradually purifying karma until liberation is possible. The Gnostic view is sharper. The wheel itself is the problem. You do not escape by polishing the character you play inside the game. You escape by realizing you are not the character, and by refusing the rules that keep you looping. That is why some Gnostic writings mention secret names, seals, and phrases to be spoken before the rulers beyond death. On the surface, it sounds like magical password lore. At a deeper level, it is about identity. You are meant to recognize where you truly come from. When the soul remembers its origin in the higher light, it does not grovel before the Archons. It does not beg for one more chance inside their system. It states what it knows. I am from beyond this realm. You do not own me. Your world is not my home. In that recognition, the net begins to lose its power. The paradox is simple. The more intensely you identify with the story of me in this life, this body, this name, this role, the easier it is to be recycled. The more deeply you sense, even in small moments, that your essence is older than your biography, older than this planet, older than the Demiurge's experiments, the less grip the cycle has on you. So if there truly is a trap, what can you actually do? The Gnostics were not interested in abstract speculation. They saw their insight as a map, and a map is meant to be used. Crucially, the map doesn't begin at the moment of death. It begins right here, in your ordinary days, in the way you pay attention. The first and hardest step is to ask, not once but again and again, who am I when all of this is stripped away? Who am I without my job, my status, my failures, my achievements, my trauma, my religion, my labels? Who am I without the voice that is narrating my life in my head? Most of the time we avoid that question. We pour ourselves into distractions, goals, dramas, beliefs, anything to stay busy inside the role. But every time you stop and look, every time you become aware of awareness itself, the hold of the role loosens. The Demiurge can only bind what clings to his world. He can only shape what insists on defining itself by his material. That is why Gnostic practice emphasized inner knowledge. Gnosis. You don't need to live in a cave or repeat complicated rituals. You begin with simple, ruthless honesty. Notice your thoughts instead of becoming them. Sit in silence and watch the mind spin its stories. pray, or contemplate, not as begging to a distant ruler, but as turning your attention toward the silent center of your own being. These practices are not about being spiritual in a fashionable way. They are rehearsals. If deception intensifies after death, if lights, voices, and feelings become louder and more persuasive, then the only instrument you will have is the quality of awareness you've cultivated now. Here is a simple exercise you can try. Close your eyes and imagine yourself at the threshold. The body has fallen away. You feel weightless, free. Ahead of you, a radiant tunnel of light opens. The warmth is indescribable. You hear the voices of people you loved calling your name, saying, "Come home." For a moment, let yourself feel the pull, and then quietly, ask inside, "Is this the light of my true home, or a projection built for me?" Don't rush to an answer. Pay attention to the subtle difference between being pressured and being invited, between being emotionally pushed and being deeply recognized. You're not trying to visualize the correct afterlife scene. You're training your ability to pause, to question, to feel beneath the surface of appearances. Gnostic texts talk about seals and signs that the awakened soul carries. On one level, these are symbolic. On another, they point to something real, a kind of inner authority that cannot be faked. You may never memorize ancient names of aeons or memorize long formulas, but you can grow in recognition that your consciousness is older than this universe, recognition that your deepest value does not come from this world's approval, recognition that you belong to something that cannot be contained by any archonic structure. As that recognition grows, how you live begins to shift. You might still go to work, pay bills, care for people, face challenges. But in the background, something fundamental has changed. You stop relating to life only as a test you can fail. You stop clinging to the idea that you need infinite lifetimes to earn your way out. You begin to taste fragments of freedom now. The Gnostic path is not about hating existence or escaping through despair. It is about clarity, seeing the stage for what it is, without being hypnotized by it. Every moment you are fully present rather than lost in automation is a small fracture in the cage. Every moment you remember that you are awareness itself, not just the story passing through it, is a step beyond the reach of the wheel. So we circle back to where we started. What if death is not simply an ending or a beginning, but a test? Not a test graded by an external god, but a test of recognition. What you meet after the body falls may depend less on what you believed and more on how awake you are to your own essence. For centuries, people have been told that after death the soul goes to heaven or hell, reward or punishment, light or darkness. The Gnostics hint at a more unsettling possibility. Both heaven and hell can be used as illusions, as tools to guide you back into the cycle. In this journey together, we've touched on the Gnostic origin story of the Demiurge and the Archons, looked at the idea of a false light that dazzles the soul, explored the wheel of karma as a mechanism of repetition rather than growth, and considered remembrance and presence as the keys to an entirely different path. But there is one thing no book, no video, no channel can do for you. No one can remember for you. Not a priest, not a guru, not even a host on a channel called Gnostic Codex. The real question is not just, what will happen after I die? The deeper question is, who will I be when that moment arrives? Will you automatically follow the first comforting voice you hear? Will you surrender to the brightest light simply because it feels familiar? Or will you pause and listen beneath the surface? Maybe the way you live right now, the degree of awareness you bring to your everyday choices, the courage with which you face fear, the honesty with which you look at yourself, is already shaping that future encounter. A soul that remembers is difficult to trap. A soul that is awake is difficult to deceive. And maybe that is the secret the false creator fears most. The prison has never been stronger than your attention. Where you place that attention, how you use it, what you choose to believe and question, these are the levers that either tighten the bars or begin to dissolve them. As you leave this video, carry one simple inquiry with you. If a light appeared to me right now calling me home, would I recognize what stands behind it? Sit with that question when you wake up. Sit with it when you feel déjà vu, as if you've lived all of this before. Sit with it when life feels scripted, looping, strangely familiar. If this exploration stirred something in you, share your reflections. What do you feel deep down might lie beyond the veil we call death? Do you sense that this life is part of a larger pattern? Or does some part of you remember a home beyond any pattern at all? And if you want to keep walking through these mysteries together, you're welcome to stay close to this work. There are more codices to open, more illusions to expose, more sparks to remember. This is Gnostic Codex, exposing the false light, remembering who you are,